Guys, welcome back to another video. So we have some news here about another first-party Sony studio that is shutting down. I see a lot of people talking about this, but it is Pixel Opus, which is a smaller Sony studio, and they made games like Concrete Genie. They also made a game called Entwined, and then they had a title that was in the works for the PlayStation 5, and that obviously was canceled because the studio is now going away. Now, I had never played any of their games. Concrete Genie was always one that I was somewhat interested in. I thought it looked pretty cool, but I never played it. And this is a smaller studio compared to all of the other studios that PlayStation has. But this is just another one of the studios within the PlayStation studios that make these more unique, different styles of games over the last number of years that PlayStation is seemingly phasing out as they're putting more and more investment into their Virtuous Cycle. So we'll look at a tweet here, which is a pretty good tweet, kind of gives us just a quick list of some of the stuff that has happened recently with PlayStation studios and their more unique studios, I would say, that have made more unique games than their other big AAA studios and what's happened to them. So you have Japan Studio, which was a phenomenal studio. They made a ton of great games on the PlayStation Vita, on the PS4, on the PS3. Like, they did so many awesome games. Like, you go to their list here on Wikipedia and it is really just massive. It's the games that they have worked on all the way back to like the PS2 and the PSP and stuff like that. Even the PS1, I believe they made on the original PlayStation. So it was a great studio. They did a bunch of stuff. Some of the games that I loved, like Soul Sacrifice on the PSP, Gravity Rush on the PSP, a lot of their PSP stuff I was really into, and even games like Shadow of the Colossus, like lots of awesome stuff, right, from Japan Studios. And it was a shame to see that Sony had shut them down after just having such a great repertoire of talents and games that they had put out. Now, then there's also Sony Bend, which the Sony Bend studio thing is one that was in the news about a year ago, or I think more. When was this? This was in April 2021, so 2 years ago, sorry. And we remember the whole story here about Bend Studios. They are the ones that made Days Gone, which definitely wasn't Sony's best game, but it was one of those games that had a division amongst the people. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people didn't like it. Critically, it didn't score that great compared to what I guess first party Sony games, what they're used to, with just 9s and 10s across the board. Days Gone did not do that for them. And they wanted to go ahead and expand on Days Gone and make Days Gone 2, and Sony shut that project down. This was a report from Bloomberg back in 2021. And it says here, Bloomberg sources say that after The Last of Us 2 was completed, Sony moved multiple Naughty Dog developers onto the T1X project, and the remake effectively became a Naughty Dog project. And that remake, as we know now, is The Last of Us remake, with all of the controversy around that, where they released that game at full price. And it's, I think, the third release of The Last of Us since that game actually launched back on the PS3, which is pretty crazy. And they even just released the PC version of it, which has had so many bugs and technical issues, which is a trend right now going on within the gaming industry. But it continues here and says, as a part of the same report, Bloomberg also says that Sony Bend pitched a sequel to Days Gone after the game's release in 2019, but was rejected. Sony then apparently moved Bend developers onto 2 Naughty Dog projects, a multiplayer game. You can assume that is the big Last of Us multiplayer game that now is a standalone game rather than an add-on to The Last of Us 2, because they're saying it is just too ambitious to be an add-on. They had to make it their own game. And then a new Uncharted project, which that I believe is still rumored because we haven't seen an official announcement for that. But the whole point of this was Bend Studios, another studio that wanted to make something different than the Virtuous Cycle games. I like to use that because that's what Jim Ryan calls it. And essentially those are the games that make all of the money for Sony. They know they can just reiterate on those nonstop and people are going to run out and play them. Those are the Uncharted's, The Last of Us, the Spider-Mans, the God of Wars. Those ones, they're just the money bags for Sony. And Ben wanted to go out and expand on Days Gone and just improve upon it, and they were rejected. Next up, there's Media Molecule. It says here massive departures, but I think what this person is referring to is the co-founder and Dreams director Mark Healy leaving the studio, which you never know why they leave the studio. I mean, there's always heads that leave the studio. They go on to different things. They want to work on different projects. They're at a later part in their career and they want to try something else. But he leaves Media Molecule. Media Molecule makes very creative games like Dreams, Tearaway, and Little Big Planet. They make definitely different games than the Virtuous Cycle games that PlayStation has. Another small studio we saw some departures from. And then again, now Pixel Opus, which is a smaller studio. Like I said, worked on the last game they worked on was Concrete Genie, and they are shutting down. Now, all of this to say, there is a trend here that I would say could be somewhat concerning if you're a PlayStation fan that is interested in a wider variety of games, because all of these studios go against Jim Ryan's Virtuous Cycle. And this was a quote back from April 2nd, 2022, Jim Ryan talking about more studio acquisitions and organic growth and not putting their games into a subscription service because it would hurt the Virtuous Cycle. He says this: "We're growing our studios organically and we're growing through acquisition. We acquired 5 studios during the course of 2021. We're in discussions with Bungie and we have more planned. This is getting us into a virtuous cycle where success begets success. The games that we make are getting bigger. They're getting better. They're getting more beautiful. They're getting richer. The narrative is getting stronger. This is really great. And gamers tell us this is what they really want from PlayStation." And this paragraph right here, I think, is very, very telling of where PlayStation sees their entire brand. Those very strong narrative games, because that's what fans are telling them that they want, but they have no interest for the smaller, more creative games and a more of a diverse catalog of gaming. And he comes here and says, "Now I have to say, putting these games into a subscription service immediately upon their release would break this virtuous cycle, and we wouldn't be able to invest in the way that we're currently able to. So we're not going to do it. We're going to stick to the approach that we have and has served us well under many years now." Essentially saying, we can see that when we put out these games at $70 at full price, people run out and buy them. We're not going to put them into a subscription service because we would be losing out on the customers that want to go and pay full price for these games, no matter how many times essentially that we put them out. When you think about the Last of Us remake, and I bring all this up because it's sad to see these studios closing. I'm somebody who likes the diverse catalog of games. I like having different things to jump into and play. Sometimes I want to sit down, put my headphones on, get immersed into a strong narrative game and just sit there for hours and just kind of forget about the world. And sometimes I have an hour and I want to just jump into something smaller that is just pure gameplay, fun gameplay. I love having that choice. Whereas it seems like right now with PlayStation in the way that they are going, that isn't going to be the way of the future for PlayStation with their first party titles. At least obviously you're going to have third party titles that you can take care of all of those other desires you have for the different styles of games that they make or that other developers make. And we take this comparison here, right? Because we just saw Phil Spencer with his interview talking about having that wide catalog of games, and then people twisting all of his words and saying that he means things that he absolutely doesn't mean. If you've been following the industry, if you've been following Xbox for the last number of years, Phil Spencer was literally reiterating their current strategy, which is having lots of different styles of games and allowing people to access these games wherever they want. It's not just about making that one huge, big AAA experience. At the end of the day, you got to look at both these catalogs, and they are both going in completely different directions from a first-party perspective. And for me, when people look at Xbox and they say, well, what does Xbox bring in terms of value? Why do people like Xbox? It is because of the diversity in the games that they do bring, where it isn't that same third person action cinematic style of game. And that's what I love that Xbox has going for them. And Phil Spencer doubling down on that, I think, is a very good thing. And it is going to help them grow at the end of the day. And what they need to do essentially right now is just deliver on the big virtuous cycle games that PlayStation likes to talk about. But seeing more studios like Pixel Opus shut down, again, depending on where you are, to me, this isn't a great thing from a first-party studio perspective, because think about a lot of the creative stuff that previously came out from these studios. It seems like you're not going to see that anymore from PlayStation. It is going to be the same stuff. And on top of that, we know that they're moving over to creating more live service games. They want to create those 12 live service games by 2026. So you would assume they're taking all the resources from these smaller creative studios and throwing all of that into the Virtuous Cycle and into their live service game. So unfortunately for Pixel Opus, hopefully everybody there lands on their feet and finds jobs elsewhere. But if they have some definitely good developers from these studios, if you're Xbox, you may be looking at, hey, we can get some of these developers to work on some of the smaller games, some of the mid-tier games that they have over there, and add those to the Xbox catalog. Now, there was another announcement here I want to talk about, and that is the Xbox expansion cards. Xbox finally did it. We've been waiting for this moment. Took them way too long. We saw this report here back at the beginning of April that there are also cheaper Xbox expandable storage cards that are coming on the way from Western Digital. So that was good when that happened. But with the Seagate cards, the ones that have been out since launch have been the same price, with just some small discounts here from retailers every now and then, but still just a terrible pricing. A solution that I personally thought when Xbox announced was the better solution between the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. But now, in hindsight, as the years have progressed, when you're seeing how much cheaper you can get stuff for the PS5, how much cheaper you can get SSDs for the PS5, it's obvious, which is generally what happens with proprietary technology. Proprietary technology generally is the worst option for consumers, because you have the companies out there that can keep these at a certain price because there is absolutely no competition. This is why you need competition in literally everything. And seemingly that's what has happened here with these Xbox expansion cards. So pretty disappointed on that side of things, but they have finally done it, and that is they have cut the prices. So here are the new prices for the Xbox expansion cards. For the 512 gigabyte Seagate expansion card, it is now $89.99, which is a nice cut from $140. For the 1 terabyte, it is $150, which is again a nice price drop from $220. Then 2 terabytes, this is another big price drop. It is currently $280, and it is going to down from a $400 card. Just an insane price at $400. I mean, more expensive than the Xbox Series S, right? I don't know. You could just go out and buy an Xbox Series S instead of buying an expansion card. So just the pricing was insane. Now they are definitely at more reasonable prices, but I can't wait for that competition to enter the market and hopefully drive some of these prices down even more over the next couple of years. At these prices, it's definitely more enticing though for people to eventually want to go out and expand their storage, but it definitely took too long. Happy it's here. And we'll see what hopefully there's more competition than just Western Digital that comes out with these expansion cards. Hopefully they've opened it up to many different manufacturers. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.